What's up, guys? I'm Nobody Special, and the Wall Street Silver subreddit is in the news. On Friday, Reuters put out an article about the sub and some of its members. We're going to go line by line through that article and give my reaction. You ready? Hit it. Thank you for joining me. I'm Jack Gamble, and I'm Nobody Special. And looks like Wall Street Silver is in the news. On Friday, Reuters ran an article titled, "Can Reddit's Silver Apes Beat the Market?" The article was put out by Peter Hobson. It featured Wall Street Silver, some of the founders, and some of the members. And we're going to do our reaction to that today. So without much further ado, let's get into the article. First things first, here we have a picture. There's our man Troy right there on a necklace, looking sharp. Okay, I like what we're saying, like what we're showing. Check out the next picture. There's some of those beautiful 1,000-ounce bars. I think those are 1,000-ounce bars. Got to get more of those off the market. Okay, and here's Kerry Craker. Thank you for everybody in Wall Street Silver who helped me figure out how to pronounce his name. It would have been embarrassing to mispronounce his name in this video. You'll see Mr. Craker was featured pretty heavily in this video, and I think they did actually a really good job describing Kerry, and he strikes me as a very good cross-section of the Silverbacks and the Wall Street Silver movement. So, Kerry, shout out to you for putting yourself out there. This was awesome. There's Kerry again, holding up what looks like, is that a 2-ounce bar? I don't know, but nice. I like the shiny. There's, oh, it was a 10-ounce bar. It looks like that's the same bar in the picture there. I also see a couple of silver Krugerrands. Very nice, very nice. There's that bar again. There's the Krugerrands. And there's those 1,000-ouncers. All right. All right. So far, so good. So let's get into the article. Kerry Craker, 56, has worked in kitchens all his life. Since March, he's spent around $100 a week, half his spare cash on silver coins. He's part of a growing social media movement who can say they're buying bars and coins for protection from the coming age of inflation. Okay, first paragraph. Right away, I have a bone to pick. Here's my problem. And Kerry, this has nothing to do with what you're doing with your money. Okay? My problem here is they're saying that Mr. Craker has spent around $100 a week, half his spare cash. Okay? Incorrect. Kerry has not spent one penny. What he's really done is he has protected his wealth from inflation and from bank manipulation. Okay? You don't spend money on silver. You store wealth in silver. Silver is a store of value. That money, that wealth still exists that Kerry has spent on silver. You only spend on premiums and shipping. Everything else is stored. Okay, so right away in the first paragraph, really the first sentence, the author is kind of displaying a little bit of, maybe ignorance is a strong word, I'll say a lack of understanding in just what it means to become your own bank and to store your wealth in silver. Kerry Craker gets it. The author, not so much. Thanks to a community of like-minded silver stackers gathering on social media platform Reddit Inc., Seattle-based Craker says he also feels empowered. And to that I would say, Kerry, you're right on. I remember the first time I held a 10-ounce bar of silver in my hands. It was awesome feeling. I did feel empowered. I mean, you have become your own bank. You store your wealth for yourself where inflation can't eat away at it. So you should feel empowered. They're so encouraging and so convinced in the changes they can cause. Craker, who lost his home in the financial crisis, told Reuters. Okay, I can empathize with that. I didn't lose my home in the financial crisis, but I did buy my first home right before the financial crisis. So I lost almost all of the money I made working on a commercial fishing boat through my first house. I mean, my losses were over $100,000 on my first condo between the money I put into it and the money I lost in the sale. So, I mean, Kerry, I feel for you, brother. I'm right there. I mean, I worked my butt off on that boat. I worked my hands to the bone, and it all went up in smoke in the great financial crisis. So, I feel you. Moving on in the article, inspired by Reddit's forum Wall Street Bets, some of the 122,000-strong community hope to corner the market and bring down what they say is an unjust banking system. What we say is an unjust banking system. You think? Market professionals say that is unlikely to succeed. There is plenty of silver, and central bankers in the United States and Europe expect inflation to stay in the low single digits. Yes, and nobody special is having a special deal on bridges for sale. Anybody want to buy? Inquire within. Who are they kidding? All right. Market professionals say that's unlikely to succeed. Anybody remember Ronan Manley's article about how the LBMA was 3 days away from running out of silver? 3 days. Yeah, I'm sure there's plenty of silver. They want us to think there's plenty of silver. Nobody knows how much silver is actually for sale, do they? They've got it in unallocated accounts, which is just glorified IOUs. Nobody really knows how much silver they have. So this paragraph, again, I think there's a lot of powerful people would like us to believe this. I don't know how true any of this is. But bankers aren't getting through to this group. You're right. The bankers are not getting through to this group. And I don't think that is a poor reflection of this group. I think that is a poor reflection of the bankers and just how we're not buying their BS anymore. Kerry says, there's a bit of anger, like F the system. Sorry, it's a family show. If there's a back door to wealth, I might take that door because the front door is closed, said Kraker. The bankers and others have basically shut that door for everyone who's not themselves. I really like this analogy, Kerry. I think you're right on. They have closed the front door. They have weaponized inflation as a way to permanently steal spending power and wealth and the fruit of our work away from us and into their coffers. So you're right. Precious metals does provide you backdoor access to building long-term wealth because it's a way to rescue or to preserve what you've made for yourself and to keep it safe from them. So that's a very good analogy. I like that. The core of the movement is a Reddit community called Wall Street Silver, formed in January at the time Wall Street Bets was marshaling an uprising of ordinary people against the financial elites through coordinated buying of company shares. Reuters spoke to more than 20 members who call themselves Silverbacks and Apes, have a homepage featuring an image of an army of primates on the march from the Planet of the Apes movie, and say things like, ape likes shiny. They organize raids, days on which everyone buys together. That's pretty good. I like all that. Now, that's actually one of the better descriptions of Wall Street Silver that I've read. So that's pretty good. Here's a picture of one of our posts. I think that was one of Ivan's posts there. Here we go. The group's founder, Ivan Bayuki, I hope I pronounced that right, is a 24-year-old former car salesman living with his parents in Alberta, Canada. Now is the time to wake up and take the power back in the hands of the people, says one of his characteristic posts. Okay, this paragraph right here is probably my single biggest issue with this article. All right? Really? That's how you're going to describe Ivan. All right? This guy has built this subreddit from 0 to 122,000 people in a span of about 3 months, 3.5 months. All right? He's got the ear of an entire industry. All right? He has exposed and brought to the brink of failure one of the largest frauds in the history of the financial system through the creation of this group and this movement and the way he has helped it to coalesce. He's created a focal point where the group could coalesce. And he's got these market manipulators shaking in their boots. And the way they describe him is 24-year-old former car salesman living with his parents. Give me a break. All right? Something tells me in a couple of years people won't be describing Ivan this way. And this just reeks of agenda, the way that they describe him here. This really rubbed me the wrong way. I definitely disagreed with this. I mean, there's a lot you can say about Ivan, about what he's done, about this movement, and for that matter, Lee and Jim also. And the work they've done has been fantastic, and it is a huge amount of work that they have put in. Like, you can just tell. I mean, it's taken me a lot of work to put together my short videos that I did in the Reddit group. I can't imagine how many hours of the day Ivan and Lee and Jim are putting into running this subreddit. So to describe him as a 24-year-old former car salesman living with his parents, I just think is, I've said my piece on that matter. that really rubbed me the wrong way. That's probably my biggest bone to pick with this article. Moving on, silver costs around $26 an ounce. Stackers think the price will rise as inflation erodes the value of currencies. Demand for silver rises and supplies run short. Some say that by buying up bars and coins, they can jack up prices by 100% or even 1,000%, to the point where they can call the shots against the so-called bullion banks, the large financial institutions which lead trade in precious metals. Okay, I have no issues with this paragraph. The one thing I'll say is the raids, and by buying up the physical, our goal, me personally, I view this as not trying to jack up prices, but trying to pull back the curtain that has been used to hide the real intrinsic value of silver and gold. All right, we're not trying to jack up prices. We are going for real world price discovery because the market in its current form is fraudulent. There has been an entire paper industry created for the sole purpose of absorbing demand for gold and silver without affecting the physical supply, basically manipulating prices downward. The gold industry and the silver industry have created ways that they can take our money without the asset we're buying appreciating in value. And that drives me nuts. That really rubs me the wrong way. So, no, we're not trying to jack up prices. We are trying to expose the fraud and set those prices free. That is a big difference. Moving on, a March Post pictured silver coins laid out to spell a message to the head of J.P. Morgan Chase & Co., a U.S. investment bank which denominates the bullion trade. Kiss my A, Jamie Dimon. J.P. Morgan declined to comment. I got a kick out of this, all right? Because one thing I like about the ape movement as a whole and Wall Street Silver, we don't take ourselves too seriously. A little self-deprecating humor here and there is good for anyone, and I think a lot of people, Jeff Christian, could probably stand to live with a little bit of self-deprecating humor. So I like this. I like this post, and or this. Yeah, I love the post and the way they quote it, and the fact that they say J.P. Morgan declined to comment, because I just love to hear J.P. Morgan's comment on that. But I got a kick out of that. In a year or two, we will have millions of people in the movement, Bayuki told Reuters. Again, Ivan, I'm sorry if I'm butchering your name. And then it will be over for the bullion banks. Right on, man. I mean, it may be less than that. I could see this group, if we get a real move in the gold or silver price, which I think we are way overdue for, I think membership in this subreddit is going to explode higher. And I do mean explode, where I think we'll be looking back on 6 digits like a thing of the past. So here we've got corner the market in quotes. Kind of worried where they're going with corner the market, because corner the market has connotations of manipulation. And, you know, what we're doing here, we're not Hunt Brothers trying to corner the market for ourselves. Again, this is about setting silver free from the manipulation. Anyways, moving on. Prices of silver and gold, which are traditionally seen as safe stores of wealth, have risen since 2019. Gold is up around 40% and silver around 70% since then. The silver stackers are joining millions worldwide who believe currencies are vulnerable, a fear that has grown as governments borrowed and printed money in the pandemic. Understatement of the year. But this is accurate, right? And if you ask me, even though gold is up 40% and silver is up 70%, I think that is chump change compared to where the actual value of this stuff is. And if we ever get rid of all of these BS paper claims on gold and silver, these 40% and 70% price swings will not even be a blip on the chart. That's just my personal take. Here's another quote. It says, "It scares me every day when this bomb will burst," said Tim Hack, a 23-year-old stacker in Germany. Silver and gold really have intrinsic physical value that you can even feel when you hold it in your hand. Tim, I really agree with this. Like I mentioned earlier, the first time I held a 10-ounce bar of silver in my hand, I don't want to get too weepy here or seem too overly dramatic, but and a lot of you guys in this group are probably new to stacking too. So the first time I ever bought a actual silver bar was early last year. It was one of those Envela COVID bars. I don't know if any of you guys have them, but man, it just felt good. And I remember I bought 7 of them, and I remember just holding a brick of 7 of them in my hands. And God, that felt good. That was awesome. And I was hooked at that moment. I only paid about $17 an ounce for them, too. So that was money in the bank right there. Posters on Reddit joined the silver fray on January 27th when posts appeared on Wall Street Bets saying that if enough people bought the metal, they could push prices to the moon. Corner the market, said one. That's accurate. I mean, this group is an offshoot of Wall Street Bets. Wall Street Bets people, the diehards over there probably don't like us to say that, but the fact is, I mean, some of the original DD that was posted out there, some of the stuff by the Happy Hawaiian, it came from Wall Street Bets, and then when Wall Street Bets tried to censor that content, they created this competition for themselves, and that's where the Wall Street Silver Group came from, and I'm glad it did. Adding to the impetus was an argument put forward on Reddit that big banks trade huge quantities of paper contracts for silver that they don't have in their possession, keeping prices lower than they should be. In some ways, that's correct. In some ways, that's correct? You see, I disagree right here with this part. In some ways, that's correct. That would suggest that in some ways, that is incorrect. And, sorry, that is in all ways correct. The banks have manipulated prices massively lower by trading huge quantities of paper representing nothing, or representing very little silver. So the fact that they say in some ways that's correct is almost to suggest that there are ways it's incorrect. And that is horsepuggy. Contracts representing around 800 million ounces of silver are active in the New York futures market alone, more than twice the amount the exchange says is in its registered vaults, not all of which is available for delivery. Okay, so that right there, I mean, just those contracts that are open represents more than all of the silver in the vaults, let alone all of the silver that is for sale, which is a fraction of all the silver in the vaults. So, I mean, right there, we've already established that it is absolutely true that massive amounts of paper are traded representing more silver than there is. And we haven't even begun to talk about the unallocated storage schemes, which unallocated is just a huge way to absorb demand without affecting price. And don't even get me started on SLV and the ETFs. So, yeah, there is just absolutely massive, massive piles of paper representing very little silver. And that's where this movement was born. And back in March, we were 3 days away from popping that bubble. 3 days. Now, we've been unable to reproduce those results, but we have gotten better. We're not messing around with the stupid SLV anymore like we did back in March. Anyways, moving on. Much of the silver that banks buy and sell in London, another big trading hub, is borrowed, bankers and traders say. And that's true. That is absolutely true. If every professional who owns silver on paper called in their dues at once, there wouldn't be enough metal on hand. They agree. The system works because people with contracts don't want actual metal, which they'd have to pay to store and insure. They're speculators, miners, and jewelers hedging their risks. That is true, that most of the people who are trading in these contracts are speculators or, miners hedging. But I don't think it will take all of them calling in their contracts for delivery. It won't even take 10% of them calling in their contracts for delivery. I mean, in any given month, what do we have? 1% of these contracts actually stand for delivery? 1 month of 10% of the people standing for delivery, and this whole thing comes crumbling down. 1 month. So I don't think it will take nearly as much. And again, it's the psychological snowball effect. Once people start to think that those contracts might not actually represent metal, everybody will start demanding it all at once. After the posts on Wall Street Bets, around $3 billion rushed into a fund run by asset managers BlackRock that stored the silver for investors. BlackRock said it added more than $100 million ounces of silver to its stockpile in 3 days. Silver's wholesale price jumped by nearly 20%. Now, here's my issue with this paragraph. Number one, yes, it was SLV, and I guess I'm kind of glad they didn't mention SLV specifically because I don't think SLV deserves the advertising. I think SLV is a giant fraud, and it doesn't deserve to exist, and I can't wait to watch that fund get dissolved. But the fact that they're saying that they added 100 million ounces over 3 days, like we all know that was bull. We all know that was bull, that there's no way you can physically get your hands on that much metal on such short notice. It just, the logistics are just impossible unless, like the Happy Hawaiian said in that one infographic, unless you're JP Morgan and you just sell your silver to SLV, take the investors' money, and then you short silver back down, and when the investors flee, you buy the silver right back, and all you're ever doing is really just taking the paper and changing the card from SLV to JP Morgan and SLV to JP Morgan and back and forth. That's all they do with it. And it is, that whole fund is just existing to scalp value from unsuspecting silver investors. And I cannot wait till the day that fund fails. I can't wait for it. Much of the silver stored in BlackRock is in London. The London Bullion Market Association, an industry body, later said that there had been concerns that London would run out of silver. Okay, there had been concerns that London would run out of silver. Yeah, they were 3 days away from failure. 3 days. And what did they do? They called in their crooked allies in the press and on TV. They changed the prospectus in the fund. They dumped 2 billion ounces on the market. They downgraded silver and made sure their friends in the press would cover it. They had the CME group jack up margin requirements. They had the CFTC and the SEC get involved to say they were investigating Reddit trades. Are you kidding me? There were concerns that they would run out of silver? Mildly put at best. I think they were more than a little concerned. Again, 24-year-old former car salesman Ivan had these very powerful people more than a little concerned. So, again, there's a lot of misrepresentations and understatements in this article, but moving on. BlackRock told Reuters it did not track where the money had come from. Fair enough. The Reddit group's founder, Bayuki, said he watched with growing excitement, turned to his father and said, "Why don't I start a Wall Street silver community?" Good for you, Ivan. I'm glad you did. I mean, I changed my life. I'm just one of 122,000. Family forever. There's also truth in Redditors' claims that the big players can influence the silver market. One trader tactic is spoofing, sending out fake buy-or-sell orders to shift prices before completing the real trade. I agree, and we have all seen spoofing happen, and they do it every day, almost every day, clear as day, and the CFTC just turns a blind eye to it. I mean, they are so grossly incompetent. Let's just say it's so obvious that we've ruled out incompetence on the part of the CFTC. It is willful negligence. They're complicit in it. Nobody's that stupid, all right? You could hire the biggest idiot I know to run the CFTC, and they could spot this spoofing and shut it down. They choose not to. They choose to allow it for whatever reason. In 2020, JP Morgan paid $920 million to U.S. authorities to settle charges that its staff sent hundreds of thousands of fake orders into precious metal and treasury markets. The bank said at the time that the people responsible had left and it had improved its compliance system. It declined further comment for this story. Yeah, sorry. Hundreds of thousands of instances of spoofing and a couple of traders got fired and the problem just goes away, right? They pay a $920 million fine, which is a fraction of the proceeds of this illegal activity. It's just the cost of doing business for JP Morgan. That's all. So no kidding, they declined further comment on the story. Hey, would you like to talk about your criminal enterprise? No, thank you. No comment. Way to hold their feet to the fire. Moving on. But the impact of spoofing lasts only seconds or minutes, said Ross Norman, a London-based former precious metal trader. This statement really, really rubbed me the wrong way. If you're one of those futures traders who got wiped out on, I think it was February 2nd, when they dumped that 2 billion ounces on the market and when they spoofed the price down like $5 in 20 seconds or some ridiculous amount of time. All right? All the money you lost when you got margin called, that lasted more than a few seconds or a few minutes. Those traders got wiped out. Why? Because they made an investment, and when the investment started to go their ways, the people they were betting against changed the rules in their favor and then took all their money and wiped them out. And then they say, oh, but it only lasts a few seconds or a few minutes. This sentence also got under my skin, all right? And you know what? I had a lot of money in options that went belly up on that day too, so this cost me a lot of money too, and I can tell you that lasted more than seconds or minutes. Boy, that sentence really rubbed me the wrong way. Anyway, I'm getting a little heated here. Maybe I need to take a deep breath, but we must press on. The January squeeze lasted 3 days. Wall Street Bets returned to its focus on stock markets. Silver calmed. Since early February, the price of silver has fallen by $1. Okay. The squeeze lasted 3 days. I will say the squeeze was illegally beaten back 3 days later, but the squeeze is still ongoing. We're still buying up silver faster than they can dig it out of the ground. So to say the squeeze is over, I think, is incorrect. Wall Street Bets never really embraced silver. They, for a couple of days, they allowed discussion on it. That was it. But Wall Street Bets never really got behind it. And the price of silver has fallen by $1 since then, but it's also risen and dropped and risen and dropped. I mean, it's been a roller coaster. So, all right, moving on. Undeterred, Wall Street Silver issues a deluge of tips, analysis, memes, photos, and encouragement. It's only Reddit's 3,783rd biggest community, but it is frequently in the top 20 for volume of posts per day. Again, I got to give credit to former car salesman living in his parents' basement, Ivan, for building a group that, even though it's got such a small number of people relative to the other subreddits, is number 20 in volume every day. That is a fantastic achievement. Again, the way they described Ivan really rubbed me the wrong way in this article. Anyway, moving on. Ivan's a big boy. He doesn't need me to go to bat for him. When a new member posts, Bayuki often responds by saying, "You are now family forever." That's true. The other thing he says is, "Let's go." I've seen that a lot of times. Or, "Let's go, ape." Hell of a time. Reddit buyers sit at the end of a fat silver pipeline. Only about a quarter of the 1 billion ounces or so that are produced each year is used to manufacture the bars and coins that most of them are buying, analysts say. Most of the rest is used for jewelry and industrial applications. I don't know that it's a quarter. I've heard it's 60% industrial, 40% investment grade, and I'm pretty sure the 40% investment grade does not include jewelry. I'm not sure of that, though, so don't quote me on that. This may be old data. Certainly not in 2020. I'm pretty sure in 2020, investment demand far exceeded industrial usage because the industrial usage was hurt by the lockdowns and investment demand skyrocketed. So this data may be a little old, but that's all right. Michael Masaryk, who runs the world's largest gold and silver refiner, Volcambi, in Switzerland, says that 1,000-ounce bars of silver used in the wholesale market are plentiful. For small investors to think they can corner the market is entirely wrong. Again, the LBMA's own words that they were 3 days away from running out of silver begs to differ. And where do those little coins and bars come from? They come from big bars. All right? Big bars become little bars. If you buy up all the little bars, they have to melt down more big bars to make more little bars. So yes, buying investment-grade stuff does affect the supply of the 1,000-ounce bars. All right? Now, it drives up premiums, yes. So is it the most efficient way? Maybe not. Maybe there's more efficient ways. But to act like your small investor buying 1-ounce generic rounds or buying 10-ounce bars is not having an effect, sorry, that's not how it works. Those small coins and bars don't materialize out of thin air. They're melted down from the big 1,000-ounce bars. I hate when people say that the little guys don't affect the supply of 1,000-ounce bars. That's just factually bogus. They can engineer a squeeze on products, he said, but silver in total, they'll have a hell of a time. Again, read Ronan Manley's article. I think the facts speak otherwise. Investors will stockpile a lot of silver this year, but less than in 2020, according to consultant Metals Focus. consultants' metal focus. Demand in the West is strong, but in India, one of the biggest silver-consuming countries, the pandemic is reducing people's ability to buy, they say. I don't know if that's true. I've read, maybe it mentioned gold specifically, but I think gold buying in India is actually going through the roof right now. And I'm just assuming that if Indians are buying more gold, they're also buying more silver. Maybe that's a flawed assumption on my part, but I would challenge this paragraph. And I would also challenge that investment demand this year will be less than last year. I'm sorry, but you got inflation reads that are on the rise right now. And I mean, the word inflation is becoming a household occurrence these days in places it was never spoken before. So to say that investment demand for silver will be less in 21 than it was in 20, it's a little early to make that call. I could be wrong, but funds like BlackRock stockpiled 331 million ounces, the most ever in 2020. Metals Focus said in the report for the Silver Institute, bar and corn buyers took home 200 million ounces more. This year, the consultancy expects funds to hoard 150 million ounces, the second highest level ever, and bar and corn buyers 253 million ounces. So I guess what they're saying is if you factor in more people buying the coins and bars and fewer people buying the ETFs, okay, that I can buy. But you know what? They're talking about BlackRock here. This article has not mentioned Sprott once. And Sprott is buying, scientifically speaking, a metric crap ton of silver. So I don't know. Again, I don't know that these numbers really jive. I would like to revisit this at the end of the year and see how accurate this is. Let's put it that way. Somebody in the comments 6 months from now, remind me to come back and revisit these numbers. We'll see where they actually ended up. That'll be a good video to make maybe next January. Silver coins and bars can certainly hold their value. Higher inflation should lift prices, and as will rising demand from makers of goods like electronics and solar panels, said Rona O'Connell, an analyst at Traders and Brokers StoneX. Yeah, I agree with all this. Moving on. But she and others at companies that trade in the metal think predictions of $1,000 an ounce are out of this world. I would agree that 1,000 is high. We won't see 1,000 this year. But you know what? People who trade in palladium or people who trade in rhodium probably used to say stupid stuff like this, almost as if daring the universe to produce it. So $1,000 an ounce? Probably not, but I wouldn't rule it out. I mean, I wouldn't wager against it. I mean, also keep in mind, if we see hyperinflation, we could see the dollar devalue enough to the point where silver becomes worth $1,000 an ounce, and it may not represent any more buying power than it has right now. So we'll move on. We don't need to spend too much time here. Of 39 analysts and traders polled by Reuters in April, only 7 thought silver prices would average $30 or more in 2022. The highest average that they forecast was 44. I don't care what the analysts say. I'm just going to leave it at that. All right? I don't care what the analysts have to say about that because I think the analysts have other motives. Moving on. Redditors are unmoved. Craker, the restaurant worker, has begun reading obsessively about inflation, money supply, and other economic data. There's a monster around the corner, he said. I'm trying to sharpen my stick. That is a fantastic statement. All right? Kerry, you're educating yourself. You're finding this information. You know, there are people who are stupid and there are people who don't know anything. And sometimes it overlaps, but the stupid person is the person who knows the information is out there and chooses not to pursue it for himself. All right? And the person who doesn't know anything, who decides to go find that information for himself, that is intelligence. All right? So a guy who wouldn't normally read about inflation or money supply and economic data now seeking out that information, good for you, Kerry. That is awesome. All right? And you know what? It is the 21st century, and you don't need an Ivy League background. You don't need to be a financial professional to educate yourself on this stuff. So that's awesome that he's going out there and finding that information for himself. So that was a great note to end this story on. So, I guess I had a couple of bones to pick with the article. I may have overreacted to some of it. But my biggest takeaways is the author, I think, probably doesn't fully understand the scope of the problem, because the author didn't mention unallocated silver, didn't mention how the ETFs are part of the price rigging. I obviously really didn't like the way the author described Ivan. Kerry, I think you did a great job there. I think you represented the subreddit very well. So thank you for that. That's awesome. And, well, I guess we're going to end it there. In the meantime, everybody, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel. It would really help me out. Until next time, live small, dream big.